The change in presidential administration on January 20th has ushered in significant policy and legislative changes that directly impact our business.
The absolute goal, celebrating profiting off of human suffering via mass incarceration, is Damon Hininger, CEO of CoreCivic, one of the two biggest private prison corporations in the country. Hininger has spent decades climbing the corporate ladder of this disgusting industry, going from a correctional officer at a private detention center to the man calling the shots on how many more people need to be locked up for CoreCivic's stock price to rise.
ICE has estimated that this act could require 60,000 to 110,000 additional detention beds. We expect increased demand to come from the United States Marshal Service, which could require an additional 10,000 or more beds over the next several years based on past usage. We are engaged in active conversations with ICE and the United States Marshal Service in preparation for their increased secure bed needs. The detention beds supplied by the private sector are the least expensive, most humane, most efficient logistically, have the highest audit compliance scores in the system, and are readily available. Additionally, with 42 years of operating experience with ICE, the private sector beds are the least likely to be legally challenged.
And if you listen to his words carefully, the language he's using should terrify you. He talks about imprisoning people, specifically undocumented immigrants, like it's a corporate expansion strategy, not a humanitarian crisis. He's packaging mass incarceration in the same corporate buzzwords they use to sell a product. The way he describes the growth potential of CoreCivic's facility should make every single person watching this realize that the prison industrial complex isn't about justice. It's about profit. You know, there's a reason why we always say just follow the money. In the wake of Trump's election victory, CoreCivic stock price shot up from around $13 a share to nearly $24, just days after the election. And surprise, surprise, CoreCivic's PAC, it funneled $300,000 to a joint Trump campaign and RNC fundraising committee in 24, then sent another $500,000 to Trump-Vance inaugural committee in December. They did the same in 2016, handing the Trump-Pence inaugural committee $250,000. They're literally buying the policies they need to keep the money flowing. And if that means throwing more people in cages, so be it.
Because in the guise and in the wake of tragedy, we are seeing a fundamental erosion of our civil rights. In this bill, if a person is so much as accused of a crime, if someone wants to point a finger and accuse someone of shoplifting, they will be rounded up and put into a private detention camp and sent out for deportation without a day in court, without a moment to assert their right and without a moment to assert the privilege of innocent until proven guilty. Without being found guilty of a crime, they will be rounded up. That is what is inside this bill, a fundamental suspension of a core American value. Mr. Speaker, you may wonder why so many of our friends across the aisle who care so deeply about the rule of law happen to be so desperate to pass this bill. Look no further than the price tag of this bill, $83 billion. They know that it can't be paid for. They know that the capacity is not there. And you know what will be there? Private prison companies are going to get flooded with money, who give this money, no doubt. I want folks at home to look. Look at what members of Congress are invested in private prison companies who receive this kind of money, and look at the votes on this bill. It is atrocious that people are lining their pockets with private prison profits in the name of a horrific tragedy and the victim of a crime. It is shameful. It is absolutely shameful. And Mr. Speaker, I'll conclude with this. In a few months, there are members of Congress who voted for this bill who are going to pretend they didn't know about all the bad things that are going to happen because of it. So when a private prison camp opens in your town, when a dreamer...
Time has expired. I yield the gentlelady an additional 30 seconds.
So when a private prison camp opens in your town and they say, we didn't know this was going to happen, know that they did, and they voted for it. When a dreamer is disappeared from your classroom, when the President of the United States destroys what is left of the Constitution as he's announced in this attack on birthright citizenship, they will all say, we didn't know this was coming. And I want the American people to know that they did. This vote represents it.
I wanted to ask about this video I saw this morning set to the tune of, I believe, Closing Time, about deportations of illegal migrants. What's the strategy behind the White House's videos they've been putting out on this, and can you kind of talk us through the thinking on these videos?
In case you weren't aware, this video posted by the official White House account, no less, is exactly what Trump Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is not only going to try to justify, but actively encourage recreating. That's right, the official stance of the Trump administration is that the suffering of immigrants should be turned into viral content. And if that sounds familiar, it's because this is nothing new from Trump's White House. They've been laying the groundwork for this kind of fascist marketing campaign for years because they know exactly how effective it is. Trump's MAGA loyalists are masters at using racialized propaganda to reinforce white supremacy. That's their playbook, and videos like these, they aren't just about stoking outrage. They're about reinforcing the idea that some people's suffering isn't just necessary, but deserved. They want their base to feel a sense of pride in these moments. To them, cruelty isn't a side effect, it's the selling point. And that's why they're treating deportations like some kind of reality show spectacle. They're feeding their audience exactly what it wants, red meat wrapped in bigotry.
We are unafraid to double down and to take responsibility and ownership of the serious decisions that are being made. The specific video you referenced, I think it sums up our immigration policy pretty well. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And we're very proud to repurpose this app, which the Biden administration abused to facilitate the mass illegal entry of illegal immigrants into our country. It was like a fast pass at Disneyland. That's not happening under this administration. We are encouraging illegal immigrants to actively self-deport to maybe save themselves from being in one of these fun videos.
This is where the memes come in. They're not just making these policies more palatable to their base. They're making them fun. A joke. It's a game. Something that can be reshared, laughed at, turned into a catchphrase. Because once you've dehumanized people to the point where their pain is nothing more than content, you can do anything to them. And that's the entire goal of propaganda like this, to turn real human suffering into something meaningless. So that's when atrocities happen. No one feels anything about it when they do.
Every day, the men and women of ICE are going to be in the neighborhoods of this nation arresting criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats, and national security threats. Lawrence, you're not going to stop us. We made a promise to the American people. The President Trump has made a promise to the American people. We're going to make this country safe again. I wake up every morning loving my job because I work for the greatest president in the history of my life, and we're going to make this country safe again. I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
What they really, really want, the big gold nugget in the pan for them, is to find someone who wasn't really solidly Trinidad or MS-13, or might have been just like some gardener or something who'd never been in trouble. That's what they're looking
deal. Big deal. Let them find a gold nugget. Big deal. I don't care if they find a whole pan of gold nuggets. Maybe some people got caught up in it. Who knows? But you're going to get the bulk of them out. They try to do their best. I think they got everybody was a bad guy. But guess what? If there's some innocent gardeners in there, hey, tough break for a swell guy. That's where we stand. We're getting these criminals out of the United States.
Just look at Trump's current border czar, former Obama ICE executive Tom Homan, one of the key architects of the child separation policy, alongside white nationalist Steve Bannon. If this is how they react to a simple hypothetical about an innocent person getting caught up in a deportation raid, then what does that tell you? Well, this was never about removing violent criminals. This is about removing people they perceive as threats, whether they are or not. And that's where things get really dangerous, because once they start applying that logic to one group, well, it never stops there.
What criteria, though, other than, say, tattoos or maybe being in the wrong place at the wrong time, are they using to determine that someone is actually a member of one of these organizations?
Intelligence and the men and women on the ground in the interior of our country who are finally being allowed to do their jobs.
David Beer tracks immigration policy for the libertarian Cato Institute.
Why should any American care about these flights that went and the way those people were sent away?
We have no idea whether these people were in the country legally or illegally, whether they were in a gang or not.
This is how dehumanization leads to real-world violence. We've seen it before. You start by making people seem less than human, criminals, invaders, parasites. Then you justify whatever actions are taken against them. And then suddenly you have an entire system built around persecuting people based on who they are, not what they've done. The moment we let the government normalize this kind of treatment for one group, it becomes that much easier to expand it to others. And that's exactly what's happening here.
There's 26 state attorneys general that have joined our brief to the district court in D.C. to support President Trump's actions and the administration's actions to remove these violent illegal aliens who are actually proxy agents of a foreign government. And I know people throw around the terms invasion, but this is actually if people should look at this more not as a law enforcement operation, but more as a kind of a proxy war by the Venezuelan government.
It's quite clear the president believes he is keeping the United States and its citizens safe from non-citizens who are in the country illegally, first of all, and second of all, who have a long history of committing very, very violent acts, from murder to rape to sex trafficking and so on.
Don't you think they have to prove that, though? Because, I mean, I think I don't think anybody disagrees about their ability to deport people who are murderers or rapists or whatever, but don't they have to actually prove that those people are who they say they are and that they've carried out those acts of those criminal acts?
Well, we know they're violent people because...
How do we know?
Because their records have already been pulled. I mean, these people were violent.
I think that the court,
from where they came from, and now they're here illegally. So wouldn't
one of the
you want to
things
keep them here?
You know, this is why immigration policy isn't just about immigrants. It's about setting the precedent for how far this administration can go. If they can get away with this, they'll keep pushing. And before you know it, the same justifications they're using for mass deportations will be applied to protests, to political dissent, to anyone they decide is un-American.